Oh my God. Hi, Sandra.
Oh my God. Hi, Sharon. Where are you?
I'm in Korea right now. I'm in Seoul in the Watcha office. You know, when Watcha first approached me asking me if I wanted to do this, I pretty much said yes right away because I actually joined this service just to watch Killing Eve in Korea. It's the only place you can watch it. So I'm such a huge fan of the show, of you and of the creator Phoebe. So thank you so much for your time. How have you been in the past couple of months?
I'm very, very, very fortunate. There are many people who are, have other demands on them. I don't have necessarily the demands of a family, and I
Right.
don't have demands of having to work either at home. Like actually, all the work that we do, it has completely stopped.
Right.
So other
Right.
than that, I'm well, I'm healthy, my family is well and healthy,
Mhm.
and I've spent a lot of this time in reflection. And
Mm.
as you know, for the past few weeks, it's almost going into a month after the murder of George Floyd, there has been this
Yeah.
unbelievable, like, civic awakening, that has shifted, hopefully truly shifted the tectonic plates underneath this country of the United States and
Mhm.
also
Yeah.
worldwide to
Yeah.
examine racial injustice and how its ripple effect globally. I don't even have the words for it. It's not only or just or hopeful, it's also it's like that. It's just the feeling of a reckoning. And I feel
Right.
like I've spent a lot of time with my own self and thoughts. uh it's so strange because we can't go out into the world, at least definitely in California.
Right.
We're not
Right.
really that much allowed out, or you can, but with masks and all that stuff, and a lot of
Right.
us are not back to work. Um so so if you do, which I think a lot of people do, have time to be more self-reflective,
Mhm.
and I think uh that has been a very, very, very interesting challenge, because
Right.
I think if you want to change, or if you actually really want to make change,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen in a post. Do you know?
No.
It doesn't happen in an exterior
Right.
way. Even, let's say, in our industries, right? Well, let's say in the Korean film industry, probably there aren't as many women, crewing, or
Mm-mm.
all that. Same. It's the same
Yeah.
here, in the United States, for women and also people of color. So
Right.
those changes I mean, those issues are deeply systematic. You know what I mean? So they're not going to change even with a good policy or with goodwill.
Right.
They change when we really change our thought and our interior being, and that's what I've been
Right.
trying to do, for myself. I
Right.
think about, let's say, just something like Killing Eve, which is it's a it's by BBC America, but it's really completely an English show.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I am the only, the only, basically I'm the only American there, but I am the only person of color who has any type of power on that.
Mm-hmm.
Something for me to continue examining
Mm-hmm.
how in my career I have
Mm-hmm.
tried to make change, and
Mm-hmm.
also where I have missed it, or I have not
Right.
broadly enough.
Right.
For me, and I don't know, and hopefully for Koreans as well, when you realize that you've only been seeing the world through your own point of view, like you
Exactly.
cannot see the water that you're swimming in.
Right.
And now it is to wake up, even if you are believing and behaving and working to be a good person. I was actually having this conversation with Phoebe the other day, and
Oh.
she was saying that because we were
Yeah.
chatting, and she was like, it's not enough to be just like a good person and have
Right.
done things the right way that you believe. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just not enough. And that's for me the seismic change. It's just
Yeah.
try and see the things that you actually cannot see. and
Yeah.
and I am forever grateful, deeply ashamed
Mm.
at my own limitations, and
Mm-hmm.
having been woken up to that.
Yeah.
I just hope that for everybody, actually.
I think, it requires a lot of vulnerability and also courage to really reflect on that. And I think this time, you know, when we're all in self-quarantine, you're forced to sort of sit with yourself and be in stillness. And I think from that point, you can sort of be vulnerable and willing to see what you've also done wrong or done right, and be willing to fight, you know? It's not enough to just be good or, you know, put up a post. You in the end have to fight for something. And I think, you know, that has a lot to do with how the third season of Killing Eve begins, because, you know, season 2 ends with Eve getting shot and you expect something crazy to happen. Is she going to come back as a ghost, or are they plotting a fake death? But the third season actually begins with a lot of stillness and a lot of calm and sort of the mundane drudgery that Eve is her new life. And I'm sure a lot of Korean viewers will be super delighted to see Shinramyeon and Eve making dumplings surrounded by Korean chit chat. And, you know, I wonder what it means for Eve to take herself to Koreatown out of all the places when she's really trying to recover from the physical and mental wounds of the second season.
I am so pleased that you just said all that you did. because in a way, other people just have not picked up on that. And what I try to do regarding putting Eve in New Malden, which is the largest enclave of Koreans in Europe, outside of in Europe, I should just say. You know, in some ways, you can see that you can interpret that Eve is living a pathetic life.
Right.
But I did not see that at all. I absolutely saw that, as you just said it, that she was retreating into a place of calm, into a place of anonymity where she could control things. And I remember talking to Suzanne Heathcote when she was saying, I think that Eve should be doing, like, working in a factory or blah, blah, or something like mundane, that kind of thing. And I was like, no, food.
Yeah.
Put her in the back of the kitchen, right?
Yes.
Mandu, right? Because there is something that, even though you might see that she's drinking, that she's out, that she's living kind of in a hovel, that she doesn't have her husband, she doesn't have her house, all these exterior things of what she's like, all those things that have defined her have blown up. Right? So
exactly.
She goes back to essence of her mother food. She goes back to the essence of her mother tongue, right? That's what I was really trying to stick in there.
Yes. No,
So I don't know whether it's just the Koreans are gonna like, but I'm glad that you did, because that's what I was trying to do, is that you see her not talking, you see her kind of almost placid, and you see Korean chit chat, you see her refusing to be in the front of the house and wanting to feeling more comfortable in the back of the house, in kind of anonymity, but she is actually protecting herself. Actually, I think at a moment of strength, because when she says in her first episode to Kenny, I am not coming back.
Exactly.
You hopefully will understand why the episode starts the way that it is, because she needs all of that simplicity, silence, and almost solitude and alcohol to be able to say no to him in that moment.
Yeah, you really feel how heavy the consequences were, and you know, you feel that she's truly lost everything in her life, and that's why she goes back to the foundational comfort that she grew up with. So I thought it was such a great opening, and definitely not something that I expected, but even more great because of it. Okay, so talking about Villanelle. You know, throughout the first 2 seasons, they develop such an intense love and hate relationship. It's like almost an addiction. And I thought it kind of felt like an impossible love story where they sort of form 2 halves of a whole. And, you know, what also fascinated me was their encounters are always so charged with sexual tension, but it's always ambiguous and mysterious. Their relationship just escapes all labels, you know? And I think this ambiguity is what gives the show its radical power to subvert genre and gender conventions. But, you know, in this season, in season 3, we don't really see them come in contact as often. And so I'm wondering how you see their relationship in this season and how they're continuing to influence each other.
A type of relationship that is set up like that, which is high stakes, high sexual tension, high everything, high drama,
Right.
like, you know, death, life and death.
Yes.
One of the challenges in having these characters in a television show, as opposed to a film or a play, let's say, is that it is very difficult to keep that level of tension believable, because, you know, in a television show, you are needing to move the characters forward no matter what, even if they have a baseline connection. What you said, this ambiguous, charged, sexual, energetic rivalry, mother-daughter, you know, all this stuff that's all in it.
Yeah.
It started in the pilot. I don't think that Phoebe, we never even really discussed it. And I don't really think if Phoebe necessarily thought it out. It just played out the way that it did. The way that Jodie and I played it out was the way that it played out. And it was that kind of, it was the kind of magic that can happen in film, and this, because it's an energetic thing. So your question about how we've taken this kind of ambiguous and charged relationship into the third series, the challenge, again, dramaturgically, is how to make it grow. So while I would say, and I don't want to give too much away, but
Of course.
while their first encounter in the third season is kind of exactly their relationship. It's something that is exactly what they are, and is filled with a lot of energy, a lot of energy. It moves out of it because the two individual characters are going through a disillusionment in some way. Right. So when they actually come back together at the end, not to again give too much away, but when they come back together in the end, they've realized, one, they're not afraid of each other in the same way, right? The charge has now even kind of moved into trust, or the charge has moved into understanding. You're not my mortal enemy anymore.
Right.
We've now gone through the same war together, and they're still the enemy. Do you know what I mean? So they're more the enemy towards us, and we know more, like we're more connected. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I said that all wrong, but
no, I mean,
terrible
basically for
interpret, sorry.
for Eve and Villanelle, they've kind of gone through the crazy honeymoon phase, and now they're living together. For the two of them, you know, looks very different from your conventional couple, but yeah. So what would you say is the biggest difference between this season compared to the previous ones? Is there anything that the Korean audience should keep in mind to better enjoy the story? Not necessarily just specifically Korean, but just something the audience should keep in mind.
I think it just becomes a little bit more internal. You know, let's say for Villanelle's story, it really, really kind of, in some ways, Villanelle and Eve come to did you see all the episodes?
Yes, I did.
Okay. They come almost to the same place at the very end.
Yeah.
Disillusionment, or that loss.
Yeah.
Their loss is different, but they carry, in some ways, they both carry loss, and they carry loss because of the 12, you know, because outside system.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a little bit less cat and mouse necessarily between them, but a deeper bond is forming.
A deeper bond and a deeper understanding of each other. The show's been renewed for a 4th season. What do you think is next for Eve?
I know it has to do with 12. I have been really wanting to really kind of unravel that and really get into it. But with, I think, a different philosophical point of view, she's changed so much. You know, at the end, she almost has a bit of a nihilistic, you know, view on things because she
Right.
lost. Well, I don't want to say too much, but she's lost a lot. So
She's lost a
where
lot,
do
yeah.
you go?
Right.
After all loss, after everything
Yeah.
kind of burnt down,
Yeah.
is there a freedom in that?
Is there freedom in
I
that?
don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I would like to explore that in season 4. Is there
Yeah.
that? And also, is there now a new interpretation that they have of Eve and Villanelle's relationship? And
Right.
and always, is it possible to be
Right.
in a relationship with each other? Because also, as you know, dramaturgically, the romance is why it's a romance is because it doesn't work.
Right. An impossible love story.
Yes.
I feel like I'm taking a class on storytelling.
It's because it doesn't work. And so
Right.
I think we're always kind of examining that to one extent or another.
Right. Oh my God. Oh, I have so much to take in.
That's so much to chat about.
I know, this could go on forever.
I'm so happy that Killing Eve is in Korea.
Yes. I mean, you have a lot of fans here, Sandra. So many people love Killing Eve.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's good. I mean, I think, the Korean audience now really has a craving. We have a craving for these stories that are different about women and different stories about different women. Because the setup of Killing Eve is crazy, An MI5 agent becomes obsessed with the assassin that she's tracking. But I mean, there's just so many things to explore about what it means to be a human, what it means to be a woman, desire and yearning in these narratives. So I think people have really responded amazingly to Killing Eve, and it's kind of what we didn't even know that we wanted,
That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. I really feel, I know I've said this before, that Killing Eve for me is really an exploration into the female psyche.
Exactly.
And I unabashedly say that. It's like,
Yeah.
if you're not interested in that, then
You're missing out.
out. But that is, and even in the exploration of, a woman in her 20s, a woman in her 40s, and a woman in her 60s with Caroline.
Right.
That
Oh my God. Fiona Shaw is just...
Fiona Shaw, beautiful, portraiture of these three
Yeah.
women who are in their power and not in their power.
Right.
And how they deal with loss and how they are not dealing with loss. And you just get to see that in slightly different generations, which is also I really like. Because it's
Right.
not in terms of a family.
Right.
Which I think that a lot of times in the, previously or in the past, female characters have only been defined or examined through their roles in a family type situation.
Right. A
And this is
mother
not
or a
the case.
daughter. I kind of want to go back to what we were talking about earlier, about all the things that are happening within the industry and within this world. I read a profile piece done on you, I think it was by Vulture, where you mentioned that at one point you realized that you yourself were brainwashed by the racism within the industry, that you had certain expectations of what you could do. And now that we've gone through the Me Too movement, the success of Parasite, and most recently Black Lives Matter, do you feel the conversations and, more importantly, the choices and actions actually changing within the industry? Because discussions about diversity and inclusion have always been there, but not necessarily the actions and choices.
No, I understand, and
Yeah.
that is what we were talking about, because it is so internal. I don't know
Right.
how many panels I have been on, and
Right.
you know what I mean? But it's just like the right people aren't on these panels.
Right.
It's like, why is this panel that's talking about diversity filled with people of color? We already know what it is. We do. We already know what it
Exactly.
is. And
Yeah.
what I'm fascinated, I have got to get there. I have got to get to Korea somehow.
Oh, please.
I know. It's like,
You have to.
is whether this discussion and whether is how it's interpreted through a Korean. So I'll bring it back to
Gosh.
this. I'll bring it back to director. When he said in one interview, I don't know what it was, and it was talking about the Oscars and whether he was, worried about or invested in it or whatever. And then he said, which you translated so beautifully, well, it's very local.
Yes. Yeah.
There's something in that it has continued to sit with me. And the other thing that happened to me was when he won. How many times, I can't tell you. But when he was up there on stage, I was in the audience, but when he was up there on stage, what I also could see in a very, very deep way, I would love to tell him this one day, is that here is a man, a Korean man, an Asian man, has not experienced he doesn't feel any less about himself. He doesn't feel like he has been at a disadvantage. He has not. He is not. He has not been raised in a racist society.
Yeah, he's never been a part of the minority.
He's never been a part of the minority. And seeing him up there, I could feel it, and I could. And so in some ways, I was like, that is what I know I needed to see awaken to a lot of things, which is the person of color, the Asian man, the Korean man who doesn't have this layer on him. He's just free. So when that line of local, which was like, it's like he's not saying it like that, but it's like, oh my God, that was like the most sophisticated shade I have ever.
Yes.
Oh my God, it was so brilliant. It was so
sophisticated
brilliant.
Shade. Yeah.
It's like bar none, so sophisticated, and because it's like not shade but total shade. But not shade. Not shade. Is the fact that his eyes are free. His, of course, his own point of view. Right. But I realize that I don't see like through his eyes and how I want to. So going back to your point of like the vulture thing, when I don't know where it was where I revealed this, when I got the pilot of Phoebe's script.
Right.
When I read it, I didn't know what part I was going to play.
Oh God.
And so it was a very, very, very heartbreaking moment for me. Because I spent basically my entire career.
Yeah.
And this is also something that I'm. Why would Koreans understand this? We carry this very large pain as Korean Americans because we are not. One part of our identity is completely unseen by this culture. So I have worked really, really hard my entire career to put Asian faces and Korean faces just visible. Not only them visible, then the storyteller. Right? Not
behind
then
the camera.
Storyteller, then move to the hero. Right? Because we don't have that necessarily mirrored back to us in this culture, the American culture. And that has a really, really deep effect on your psyche and how you then see yourself in your own society and what you can do and change you can do. So when I realized, when my agent was saying, Eve, you're playing Eve, I was like,
oh God.
How could I not see that?
Right.
In some ways it's funny, but for anyone who really knows what it is to not be seen, they know what I'm talking about.
Right.
They really, really know what I'm talking about. And it's like, oh, and it's just a revelation of how deep racism goes. So
I mean, you end up internalizing everything.
Sorry?
You end up internalizing.
Yeah, you
the oppression.
It's very, very, very even tricky to see. Very, very tricky to see. And so now with Black Lives Matter and how that the movement has broken open for all of us. You know what I mean? What have I not seen?
Right.
And so again, I'd be so interested, and I would like to come to Korea, is the discussion of like racism there. What is the
Oh
form?
gosh, that's an endless conversation.
Yeah.
I'm very, yes, and it's quite different. I think in Korea, most Koreans, I think, don't even have the vocabulary to talk about racism right now. Korea is actually a very racially diverse society now. But I remember even when I was growing up, you know, my teachers taught us that we should have pride in the fact that we're an homogenous country, which has never been true, but that's what most people want to believe. You know, they want to believe that it's just familiar faces out there when, you know, it's just so not true, and you hardly see conversations like that happening in mainstream media or really anywhere. Most people are just completely unaware of it. And so I'm very interested in how racism works here, and it's just very different. And that's just an endless conversation that I would love to have with you one day.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
beer.
Or wine. I mean, gosh. So, you know, a lot of people just have to fight to become their best selves from where they are. You know, it's not given to us. It's a fight and it's a struggle. How did you keep yourself sane throughout that struggle? And is there any word of advice you can give to people going through that right now?
I want to say this in the widest way possible. I believe that there is a place of rest, a place of wholeness that is bigger than ourselves. And whatever you need to do to try and have a relationship with that space,
Yeah.
I encourage people to do, because this here, the mind, and even in the body, is not all we are. You know, and so let's say two things: going through COVID-19 and blah 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 blah. You know, it's, you know, let's say if you're in your small house with your children who you've had to school, and then you have a partner or whatever it is, it's madness. There's a place that we all can all go inside ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, even for a breath or an hour, you know, that is a place of solace, and that place is just bigger than us. And that, for me, growing that relationship is also that's what has moved me in my career.
Yeah, that really reminds me about what one of the interviews that you did before, where you mentioned that you're influenced by Jungian psychology and meditation. Because, you know, I was so happy when I read that, because Jung's memoir, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, it's one of my favorite books of all time. And I think that book has really taught me what you just said about how important and difficult it is to find peace within yourself, and as you live your life, and find how you will approach and view the world. And so I'm always interested in how to do that. Or if that is, you know, if you can reach that in every moment, or if there are specific things that you must do to reach that point. So I mean, these days I'm asking everyone how they try to stay sane.
Well, I do. I meditate a lot. I do. I meditate a lot. And actually, you know, my sitting sessions have gotten longer and longer and quieter.
Oh.
Yes, I think it's taking even more time to settle the mind.
Right.
You know, because it's also, you know, energetically, you know, especially when the COVID first wave really hit.
Right.
I think everyone was, it doesn't matter. You might be safe inside your house and all that stuff, but there is this thing where the entire world feels it.
Yeah.
There is this threat. There's this threat, right?
Yeah.
So how you interpret that threat and how you manage it, you know, you have the chance to actually really have the choice to define and usher your own experience.
Yeah.
You're doing exactly what you need to do. The fact that you're actually interested in it and you've actually tried to practice it in one way or another is, you know, I'm totally, completely interested in it as well. Because I also feel like that place actually feeds the crux of my work as well.
Yes, yes.
You know, so it is, because what else do we have? You know, if anyone, and I don't know with you, we don't have to get into it. Anyone who's come to a place of great suffering, you know what I mean. You need to, you know, you're on your knees. So
right.
You usually then go to something that is to find solace. You know, hopefully you don't. Hopefully you go outward into space. You know,
right.
I mean, space.
Right. Not just, you know, like
inwards, because that is actually, I think, very, very destructive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Space. It's not like we don't have to go into spaces. You know, but what's interesting is that it's quite tricky to talk about, to find the actual words to talk about.
It's very difficult to articulate, and at some points you sound crazy.
You know, and hopefully what will happen is our acceptance in a language, because clearly you and I are on the same page about certain things, and clearly I can feel that we're even hesitant to use certain words, but people who are interested understand and interpret it very easily what I'm saying. And that's okay.
Wow, I'm just trying to take it all in. I mean, I think those are all the questions that I had for today. I think we had 20 minutes and now we're almost reaching 45. So.
Well, really, I gotta tell you,
this
wasn't an interview so much as a conversation.
Yeah, no. Yesterday
I would be so interested in just the difference between, you know, Korean American life and Korean life. You know, you know, through cinema, you know, because it's like there at one point, I don't know who I was talking to, maybe Steve Young, you know, and he was trying to explain to me, like, our experience, again, not everyone is experiencing life the way that you're seeing it.
Right.
I had thought that, oh, let's say my sense of identity as a Korean American woman is something that a Korean person in Seoul would naturally understand, and that is absolutely not the case. It's completely different.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely had that expectation when I went back to LA for college. I thought I would find my community amongst Korean Americans because I'm bilingual and bicultural. But that was just totally not the case. It was a completely different community that I just did not grow up in. And so it was almost more difficult for me to understand that community than people who had nothing to do with Korea, because with Korean Americans, you know, we grew up with the same foundations, with the same food, with, you know, parents who for a lot of my friends, their parents spoke Korean. So it was completely different point of views on the same things, which made it actually feel even weirder and more dissonant. And so I remember being very confused when I really realized that for the first time in LA.
Can you give an example of, like, oh, we're talking about education, or we're talking about food, or any of those things, and how you would interpret it, and how, like, let's say your friend who grew up in Ohio would interpret it?
One of the really big instances where I felt this was, I don't remember the name, but it was this audition. It wasn't a TV show, but it was like a performance audition show that this one Korean American, I think it was with Koream, or they put on this audition show, and I was there at the audience, and you know, it was like Korean Americans on the stage singing pop songs because, you know, I recognize the voice. Their voices sound like the voices I hear in Korea. Their faces look like the faces that I see in Korea. And yet the way they were performing, the persona they were putting on stage, the music they were playing, it was completely unfamiliar to me.
Aha. You know, that is very, very interesting. So you mean the gestalt of it?
Exactly. The gestures and the mannerisms and the facial. Because like they were putting on Beyonce while I was used to like Girls' Generation, you know? But outwardly, they look the same. It's the
Was
same
it a feeling of confusion, or was it a feeling of like wrongness? Or
No, it was definitely not. It was confusion and it was disillusionment, I think, because, you know, in Korea, I always had a hard time finding my community because I was always in between. You know, I was too Korean to be American, too American to be Korean. So I thought my answer lied in the Korean American community. And to go to one of a big Korean American event and realize that I was also not a part of this, that I felt like that the fact that I was confused there really just, it was just another sense of like, okay, wow, I don't even belong here. So that was my personal thought, but yeah, I just remember being very confused and disappointed that this wasn't my community in a way. Yeah.
It's interesting. I sense a theme there with you. I'm wondering, even though, what that sense of feeling that you were really searching for.
But I think I've kind of moved on from that stage in my life where I trying to find that sense of belonging. You know, like just before Parasite, I actually moved back to Korea from LA, not realizing that I would get this Parasite job and be in LA. And I really thought that I was coming back for good, that I would be in Korea for at least the next 5 years. And that just wasn't the case. You know, I got pulled right back to Los Angeles. And that kind of made me realize that my life is now it's always going to be going back and forth. I will always just be in between, and now I'm at a place where I'm okay with that and I'm willing to explore that rather than trying to find one or the other.
Well, eventually we'll have to have a glass of wine. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you, Sandra.
Talking to you really well.
That was such a great conversation. I'm so happy that we were able to do this.
Same.